We're back. Happy New Year, everyone. And we're finally going to be finishing up the start to finish Neurofunk tune. I'm really happy to be back streaming and be back with this tune, with this start to finish tune, and getting to the mixing and mastering phase. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on over to Ableton. All right, so here we are in all of our pastel color glory here. So basically, I've done all of the boring stuff off stream. Obviously, there's many different ways to skin a cat when it comes to mixing and mastering. I sometimes just can't be asked to export everything into stems and do a full-on stem mix down. But yeah, I thought because we're doing a proper start to finish series, I would do a proper stem mix down. So it takes a little bit of doing, but it's worth it. And it's a couple of bits just to flag if you've never done this before on Ableton. First of all, in Ableton, when you go to export or render, you can select all individual tracks, and then that will just very cleanly and simply export everything. But if you do all individual tracks, it will literally just take each of the channels directly out, as opposed to going through any sort of group processing that you've got on the channels. So if you want all the group processing, it's a little bit fiddly, but what you have to do is go through and solo each channel and then just render the master channel. So I've grouped everything down a bunch for that reason. So we went from like 50 channels down to like 19 stems. So that's tip number one. The other thing is don't put any dithering on if you're doing stemming. This is a bit beyond my knowledge, but you basically don't want any dithering unless it's the final render, like the final master, because dithering has to do with like the noise floor of the wave file and whatnot, and you don't want or need that at this stage in the game. So no dithering. And then this was a little tip, I think, from Underbelly. Turn on normalization when you're exporting the stems, because if you don't have normalization on, you're basically preserving the exact mix that you've got in the project file. Normalization boosts everything up to 0 dB, so that way it forces you to actually start from scratch and do a full mix down. Whereas if you just import stuff with no normalization on, you can just put everything back to 0 and it'll preserve the exact mix that you had previously, which is what we want to avoid in this stage. Enough dithering from me. Let's jump into the mix down. So the other thing that's nice with Ableton is you can just copy one channel. Like if I Control C on the chain, which is what I did in the project file, and then open up a different project, you can just paste it right in. So I've done that with the chain, and then I've done all the boring grouping and coloring here. So we've got all the melodic stuff, we've got the kick and the snare, we've got the rest of the drums here, got all the bass elements, and then everything in white down here is the effects pieces. So if we jump over to this view, let's grab all of these and close them down a little bit, like so. Let's bring everything down to -infinity. Oh, the other tip quickly before we do this is you want to make sure if you've got any stuff on the master channel that is all turned off as well when you export all the stems. You don't want, especially if you've got like a limiter, you don't want any of that, right? You just want the pure audio. And then usually the best place to start is with the kick. So let's get a piece of the track here where we've got the kick. I'll just loop maybe this whole bit here. Ignore the fact that the sidechain is clipping like crazy. It doesn't matter. So usually you want to leave yourself a bit of headroom, get the kick up to like -6 maybe for starters. And then we'll start with the bass. So I think in this section of the track, we've just got bass 1. And if I was not on stream, I would be doing a lot of this with my eyes closed, like not looking at the levels at all. It really doesn't matter what it looks like on screen, right? It matters what it sounds like. And before we go any further, let's group the bass channel up and get Duck Buddy on here, because I took all the side chaining off. Let's put a little look ahead on it and a little smooth on it. So where are we peaking? We're peaking at like -9, which is great. And this is peaking at -6. General rule of thumb that I usually go for is I want the bass to be peaking like 2 or 3 dB below the kick drum typically. So that sounds fine to me. So let's just go through and start bringing in these other elements. That sounds fine. Let's get the snare in here. All right, we'll bring the hats in. All right, what else is in this section? We got the percussion. What else do we got? We got the bass layer. So this one, I think we may need to finesse a little bit because I grouped all of the additional bass stabs and textures and stuff into one channel when I normalized it, and it looks like one of them was significantly louder than the rest. Let's get this stabby stab bit sitting where we want it to be. Maybe a little louder. All right, that's all right. And then we can bring in the lead. And the pads. What else have we not brought in yet? We've got this, we've got the live hats right at this section. Okay, that sounds about right. And we've got the rides. Pad sounds too loud. Pad still sounds too loud. The other reason, this is the other reason why you normalize everything, because listening to it now, I don't even really remember hearing the pads very much at all in the mixdown in the project file. So when you normalize everything, it brings out a bunch of elements that you maybe don't actually need or want. And you can decide in this phase, actually screw that channel. It's unnecessary. There'll be a lot of sort of hidden stuff in the project file mix that you may not actually need. It may just be taking up room. I'm gonna bring that down even more. And maybe we'll just get rid of that channel entirely. All right, we've got the grooves in this section. And we've got noise. And we've got this texture number 1. All right, cool. So there's still a few channels that we haven't brought in, but that's pretty much everything. We still need to bring in the risers. So we'll loop this bit. And bring in this riser group. And we can bring in texture 2. And what else is happening up here? Let's listen to this section. Yep. Okay, so I guess I've grouped, or I may have been using, calling it a pad in the project and actually treating it like a riser, but that's all good. Let's listen to this build up. Yeah, I was treating that pad as a riser. All right, then we have the second bass channel. Now these stabs are sounding too loud here. And we have the bass noise that we haven't brought in. Oh, and this little impact. All right, I think we've got pretty much everything mixed in now. So let's go ahead and go back to the start and see. It's probably a bit quiet. Yeah. Because I was pushing it a bunch in the project file. Yeah, we're at like -10, -12, which is good. It's good to have a lot of headroom at this stage. Let's get span. Put span on the master. Put it on my settings. That curve is looking pretty good to me. Because if you don't fully trust your headphones, which these are not super trustworthy, they're good as a second opinion, but they're not super trustworthy. So it's nice having a span as a visual reference to see, like, are we getting the nice, like, ramp shape that we want here? We had an impact. So the other thing we need to do now is let's group this up, call it effects, group all these, call it the drums group. And there was a bunch of other processing that we had on the drums as well, which I'm just going to redo. So on the melodic group, I'm just going to throw on this little roll off, and same on the effects group, because I can hear a lot of low end in the effects that I know we cut out. And I'm going to put a limiter on here just for a minute. And we'll take that back off. And get rid of some of this low end on the melodic group as well. Nice. To me, this is sounding way cleaner than the mix that we had in the original project file. I feel like I want a little more out of the rides. Nice, I'm pretty happy with that. Now it's getting a little bit more fiddly, but I think that's the broad strokes mixed down. Let's compare this first drop and the second drop, loudness-wise. All right, so the sub's hitting at like -18 here. And then in the second drop, it's a little bit louder. So let's push this up like half a dB maybe. I'm happy with that. So this is always really humbling, but it's a good thing to do. So I'm gonna grab like a Black Sun Empire track and let's just get the drop section. It's great how their stuff always sounds so open, but yet is just pushed to the breaking point. We'll just level match it. See how little wiggle room there is in there between the dark green and the light green? Whereas on mine, look how much wiggle room there is between the dark green and the light green. So we can tighten that up a lot. Let's get G-clip on the drums, which just trims off a bunch of sort of excess transients that you probably don't need. You'll be able to see what I mean in the G-clip. So you see how you kind of have the body. You can get all those peaks out of there. Like I'm clipping it like 60%. Like if you clip it to Oblivion, you can hear the distortion, but if you clip just the tops off, it'll reduce the peak volume without actually reducing the perceived loudness, which is great. And then we'll get the glue compressor here, turn the attack up, turn the threshold down, soft clip. We're taking about 5 dB off, so we'll bring back some loudness. But look at all that. This is how much unnecessary peak volume we're clipping off now. And you can hear it's louder, it sounds louder, but in reality, it's not any louder. So where are we now? So this channel is peaking at -3, the bass is still peaking at -8. So we could push the bass a little bit harder. But of course, we haven't actually pushed our mix through any limiters or anything yet. At this stage, what I want to do is curl up in shame, because it's just so far from where the Black Sun Empire mixdown is, but I think we could still get there. Let's let Ozone work its magic. So usually what I like to do is use a little bit of AI. I find going for high intensity is way too overkill sometimes. And the main thing that I'm looking for when with this process is this spectral balance analysis that Ozone does. Because I mean, you can, like all the other settings, I kind of end up changing anyway. But the spectral balance is what I really want to see, just as a reference. Okay, so it's saying that there's too much high end and there's not enough sort of mid-range going on. Which I think is correct. So there's a couple different ways to tackle that. Because I'm feeling a bit lazy, and because we've been going for like an hour already, and I don't want this to be like end up being a super long YouTube video, we may just go ahead and let Ozone do what it thinks it needs to do on this master EQ curve. I think we can probably back this off a bit though. So this is the section where it thinks we need more volume. And then what's it saying is wrong in the dynamic EQ. I usually like to put this before the actual compression, just so the compressor doesn't have to work as hard. Oh, that's not much. It's not much. It's just right here at around 300, which is fine. And then I usually like the modern setting rather than the transient setting. I don't like how it kind of does all this transient emphasis stuff by default. I always turn true peak on here, and then keep the ceiling at -1. And really, I think we could push this a lot harder, because you can see here how little it's actually taking off. And usually, I don't like to go beyond like 4 or 5 dB of compression. That's pretty good. I mean, we're pushing the maximizer pretty hard now, and it still is, we're still at like 4 dB of gain reduction. So the next thing, and this is pretty much the last thing, is we are going to do a little bit more processing on the master channel for the build-ups. We'll get a filter, we'll get a utility, and we'll get this really handy thingamajig, easy washout. This is from Bass Clef. You can get it for free. So what this does is, like it says on the tin, it's just applying a bit of filtering and reverb. So it's all in one knob for you. Basically now, so these 3 tools, the idea is emphasize the drops a little bit more. The first thing to do is just adjust the gain. So from here, I think where the kicks start, bring it down like 2 dB. And you can do the same thing with the stereo width and just make the whole track a little bit more mono. Yeah, 70, 80% or so. Don't want to go over the top with it. Auto filter, we'll have it just turn on here, and then we will sweep up to about 120, and then we'll have the washout come in maybe like just towards the end. And that's about it. That's usually what I do generally, to emphasize a drop. Just a little, just narrow it, make it slightly quieter, wash it out slightly. And then we can copy this over to the second drop as well and drop it here. Yeah. Maybe we have the gain ramp up like that. Cool, let's do the same thing here. Let's ramp the gain back up. All right. We are pretty much there, I think. Let's stop fiddling around. Let's go ahead and render this thing, and then we can do another side-by-side comparison, just looking at the waveform. And the key is, do it until you feel like it is where it needs to be, right? There's no rules, there's no time limits when you're not making a YouTube video. Just take your time and don't stop until you're happy with it, because there are definitely times where I've done that and I've regretted it. It's always worth it just to take a little bit more time and get it to where you want it to be. So let's call this stem mixdown, or stem master rather. I did a project master just so we can side-by-side compare those as well. I'm guessing that the project master is going to sound better than this stem master, because I've been kind of rushing it, if I'm honest. But let's see. You know, you can just say, fine, I like the other one better, but it's not a waste of effort in my mind. It's worthwhile. And sometimes I will go through and render like 5 or 6 different masters, like push the limiter harder or less hard, try different compression settings and whatnot until it's sort of where I want it to be. And you can then side by side compare all the different master renders that you've got. Cool. So we'll save that. We'll open up a new project file. Let's grab both versions of this and then look at them side by side. Okay, cool. So the stem master looks louder immediately, or has less dynamic range at least. Maybe it's not louder. There is a lot more happening here in the Project Master. Let's turn this up to 174 so it's actually on the grid for us, and we can just start from the drop. All right, so this is the master we just did, the mix we just did with the stems. And this is the mix we just did. This is the mix from the project file. So the mix in the project file is louder. And I'm guessing that this is, or it's much louder in sort of the mid-range. And I'm guessing that there's some channel processing that I've got on here that I somehow didn't capture. So I mean, to me, the Project Master sounds better immediately. It's so interesting doing this. So like, I like the rides being louder in this section. I think the rides are better here. They're sitting fine in this mix, but I think they could be louder. But the bass, there's something very different going on with the bass. So that is probably user error, the way that I bounced all the stems out. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back into the project file and look at what's different. But anyway, always worth doing, I think, because there are different decisions that you're going to make every time. And doing the side-by-side comparison is... And using reference tracks and A-Bing everything is the key at this stage of the game, right? Like, I want the rides to be a little bit louder in the drop in the original mix. There's like something really missing out of the low mids in the stem mix. These are the things that I would go back now and fiddle with over a couple more listening sessions, do a couple more renders, and get to where I think this is where I want it to be. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to upload another video, which is just going to have the full track just by itself so you can listen to the finished product. Hopefully this has been an enjoyable and useful series, and I might do it again. Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you want to see more of? Should we do another start to finish series next? Should we do more tracks from scratch videos? Do you want to see me struggling with modular stuff and VCV rack some more? There's no limit to the sorts of silly videos that we can make here. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. That concludes the start to finish Neurofunk series.